From the moment I met Emily, I thought I'd hit the jackpot. She was 29, smart, drop-dead gorgeous, and had this way of making everyone around her feel special. I'm not gonna lie, when I, an average guy in my mid-30s with a dad bod and a receding hairline, landed her, I felt like I'd won the lottery. We've been married for 6 years, and while every marriage has its ups and downs, I thought we were solid. I was wrong, dead wrong. It all started when Emily told me she wanted to get a job. Up until then, she'd been a stay-at-home wife by choice. I made decent money as an electrician, so we didn't really need the extra income, but she said she was getting bored and wanted something to do. I thought it was great. I mean, who was I to stand in the way of her independence? She ended up landing a gig at this trendy cafe downtown. One of those places with overpriced lattes, avocado toast, and baristas who looked like they walked out of a hipster catalog. At first, everything seemed fine. She'd leave the house in her little black apron, a to-go coffee mug in hand, and this excited bounce in her step. "Good luck at work, Em," I'd say, kissing her on the cheek. "Thanks, babe," she'd reply with that megawatt smile of hers. I was proud of her. I really was. For the first couple of weeks, everything seemed normal. She'd come home with stories about her coworkers, funny customers, and the quirks of working at a cafe. Some guy ordered a triple-shot oat milk latte and then asked if we had gluten-free ice cubes, she said one night, rolling her eyes. Gluten-free ice cubes? I laughed. What's next, vegan water? We both cracked up, and for a moment, everything felt perfect. But then things started to get weird. The first red flag was her schedule. She started coming home later and later, saying she'd picked up extra shifts. At first, I didn't think much of it. I mean, she'd just started the job. It made sense that she'd want to impress her boss. But then there were the excuses. "Why didn't you answer my call earlier?" I asked one night after she finally got home around midnight. "Oh, the cafe was slammed," she said, slipping off her shoes. I didn't even have time to check my phone. It sounded reasonable enough, but something about the way she said it felt off, like she was reciting a script. Then there was the money. Emily started coming home with expensive stuff. A new designer handbag, fancy skincare products, clothes from high-end boutiques. When I asked her about it, she brushed it off. "Oh, it's just tips," she said casually. "You'd be surprised how generous some customers are." Damn, I'm in the wrong line of work, I joked, but inside I felt a twinge of doubt. How much could she possibly be making in tips? Enough to afford a $600 purse? It didn't add up. The final straw came on a Friday night. I'd finished a long day of work and decided to surprise Emily at the cafe. She'd been talking about how much she loved her job, and I thought it'd be cute to show up and grab a coffee while she was working. But when I got there, she wasn't there. The cafe was buzzing with activity, customers sipping on their lattes and typing on their MacBooks. I scanned the room, looking for Emily's familiar face, but she was nowhere to be seen. "Excuse me," I said to the barista behind the counter. "Is Emily working tonight?" The guy gave me a confused look. "Emily?" "Yeah, Emily. My wife. She said she works here." He frowned, then shook his head. "Sorry, man. There's no Emily that works here." I stared at him, my heart pounding. "Are you sure?" Short brunette, brown eyes, about 5 feet 6 inches. "She's been working here for a few weeks now." "Nope," he said firmly. "I've been here for 2 years. Never seen her." I left the cafe feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. What the hell was going on? If she wasn't working at the cafe, where the hell was she going every day? On the drive home, 1,000 scenarios raced through my mind. Was she lying to me? Was she having an affair? Or was there some perfectly innocent explanation that I hadn't considered? When I got home, Emily was in the kitchen, pouring herself a glass of wine. "Hey, babe," she said, flashing me that smile that used to make me weak in the knees. "How was your day?" I didn't answer. Instead, I stared at her, my stomach churning with a mix of anger and confusion. "How was work?" I asked, my voice tight. "It was good," she said, taking a sip of her wine. "Busy but good." I felt my blood boil. "Really?" "Because I stopped by the cafe tonight. And guess what? They've never heard of you." Her face went pale. "What would you do if you were in my shoes? Would you confront her right then and there, or wait for her to explain herself?" The second Emily's face went pale, I knew I wasn't crazy. The woman standing in front of me wasn't the same person I'd married 6 years ago. Not the Emily who used to text me pictures of her goofy smile while baking cookies, or who sang along off-key to the radio during road trips. This Emily? She was hiding something. She put down her wine glass carefully, like she was stalling for time. "Ryan," she started, her voice shaky. "It's not what you think." "Don't," I interrupted, holding up a hand. "Don't even try to lie right now. I went to the cafe, Emily. You don't work there. So tell me, where the hell have you been going every day?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again, like a fish gasping for air. I'm waiting, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. I've been freelancing, she blurted out. Freelancing? I repeated, raising an eyebrow. Doing what? Her eyes darted around the room, like she was looking for an escape. Marketing, she said finally. Marketing, I echoed. So, you put on an apron and tell me you're working at a cafe to go do marketing? She winced, and I could see her cracking under the pressure. Okay, fine, she said, throwing up her hands. I didn't want to tell you because I was embarrassed, but I didn't get the cafe job. I've been working at a temp agency. It's nothing glamorous, but it pays the bills. The story sounded rehearsed, like she'd had it in her back pocket, just in case. But something about it still didn't add up. You're telling me you've been working temp jobs, I said, folding my arms, but you're coming home with designer handbags and expensive skincare products? Emily, come on. Do you think I'm stupid? Her eyes widened, and for a second, I thought she might lash out. But instead, she broke down. Fine, she shouted, tears streaming down her face. You want the truth? I've been dancing. Dancing? I repeated, stunned. At a nightclub, she said quickly. It's nothing dirty, I just do some bartending, some light dancing. That's how I've been making the extra money. I stared at her, my mind racing. Dancing? Was this supposed to explain everything? Why didn't you just tell me? I asked, shaking my head. Why go through all these lies? Because I knew you'd judge me, she said, her voice trembling. You've always been so traditional. I didn't think you'd understand. For a moment, I almost believed her. Almost. But something still didn't sit right. I want proof, I said. She blinked at me, startled. What? I want proof, I repeated. If this is the truth, show me where you work. I want to see it with my own eyes. Her face twisted into a mix of anger and panic. I can't believe you don't trust me, she said, her voice rising. You gave me a reason not to trust you. I snapped. You lied to me, Emily, for weeks, and now you expect me to just take your word for it? She didn't say anything after that, just stormed upstairs and slammed the bedroom door. I spent the rest of the night on the couch, staring at the ceiling and wondering how my marriage had come to this. The next day, while she was out working, I decided to do some digging. First, I checked her phone records. She'd always been protective of her phone, but I'd never thought much of it until now. It didn't take long to notice something odd. There were dozens of calls and texts to a number I didn't recognize, often late at night. Next, I went through her emails. I felt like a complete scumbag, invading her privacy like this, but I had to know the truth. And that's when I found it, a confirmation email for an appointment at a place called the Orchid Room. I'd never heard of it before, so I did what any sane person would do. I Googled it. At first, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. The Orchid Room was listed as a private membership club, which sounded fancy but harmless. But the deeper I dug, the more unsettling things became. Reviews on sketchy forums talked about the services offered there, services that had nothing to do with dancing or bartending. My stomach turned as I realized what I was reading. This wasn't a nightclub. It was a front for something much darker. By the time Emily got home that evening, I was barely holding it together. How was work? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She hesitated, then gave me that same forced smile. Fine, she said. Did you have fun at the Orchid Room? I asked casually. Her face went white. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. I know, Emily, I said, my voice low and trembling. I know everything. Ryan, I can explain. Explain what? I shouted, finally losing my cool. That you've been lying to me for weeks? That you've been sneaking around, pretending to be a barista while working as a call girl? She flinched, her eyes filling with tears. It's not like that, she said. Then what is it like? I demanded, because from where I'm standing, it looks pretty damn clear. For the next hour, she tried to justify it. She told me she'd started working at the Orchid Room because she felt stuck in her life. She said it wasn't just about the money. It was about the thrill, the excitement, the attention. The attention? I repeated, disgusted. You're married, Emily. You have a husband who loves you. Was that not enough? She didn't answer. That night, I packed a bag and left. I couldn't even look at her. I crashed at my friend Jason's place, telling him everything. He was as shocked as I was. Man, that's insane, he said, shaking his head. What are you going to do? I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to walk away and never look back. But the other part of me, I don't know. I still love her, Jay. As screwed up as this is, I still love her. The days that followed were a blur. Emily called me constantly, begging me to come home, promising to quit the Orchid Room and go back to being the wife I thought she was. But could I ever trust her again? Could I ever look at her without seeing the lies, the betrayal? I didn't have the answers yet. But one thing was clear. My marriage would never be the same. After that night, I stayed away from home, bouncing between Jason's place and motels on the edge of town. I didn't know what I was running from. My wife, my feelings, or the overwhelming truth that everything I thought I knew about my life had been a lie. Emily kept calling and texting, pleading with me to hear her out. Every message felt like salt in the wound. The woman I'd shared my dreams with, the one I'd promised my life to, wasn't who I thought she was. She wasn't even close. But despite my anger, my curiosity kept gnawing at me. How did this even start? How long had she been doing this? And most of all, why? One night, after a couple of beers and too many questions swirling in my head, I gave in. I picked up the phone and called her. She answered on the first ring. "Ryan," she said, her voice trembling. "Start talking," I said coldly. "And don't lie to me. I swear to God, if you lie again, I'm done." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "I'm sorry," she said finally. "I'm so sorry, Ryan. I never wanted you to find out like this." "Yeah, well, I did," I snapped. "So explain. How did we get here, Emily? How does someone go from being a stay-at-home wife to that?" Her voice broke as she started to explain. "It started about 6 months ago," she said. "I was feeling lost. You were always working, and I felt like I didn't have a purpose. Then I met this woman, Vanessa, at the gym. She seemed so put together, so confident. We got to talking, and she told me about the Orchid Room. I gripped the phone tighter, and she just happened to mention it was a front for prostitution. She didn't call it that," Emily said quickly. "She said it was a high-end private club where women could make good money, just by being around rich clients. I don't know what I thought. I just wanted something different, something exciting. So you signed up," I said flatly. "Yes," she admitted. "At first, it was just small things, going to dinners, keeping clients company. But then things escalated." I could hear the shame in her voice, but it didn't make me feel any better. "And you didn't think to tell your husband?" I asked bitterly. "I couldn't," she said, her voice cracking. "How could I tell you? I knew you'd hate me. I hated myself, but by then, I was in too deep. The money was good, Ryan, better than anything I'd ever made. It felt like the only thing I was good at." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. Emily wasn't just confessing to cheating. She was confessing to a complete breakdown of self-worth, a desperate attempt to fill a void I hadn't even known was there. But it didn't justify what she'd done. "So this is my fault," I said bitterly. "Because I was working too much? Because I trusted you to tell me if something was wrong?" "No," she said quickly. "It's not your fault, Ryan. I made this mess. I didn't know how to stop." That conversation haunted me for days. On one hand, I hated her for what she'd done, for lying, for betraying me, for shattering the life we'd built together. But on the other hand, I couldn't ignore the pain in her voice, the way she seemed so lost and broken. Jason tried to help me make sense of it. "Look, man," he said over a beer one night, "it sounds like she's dealing with some serious issues. Doesn't mean what she did was okay, but maybe she needs help. Therapy or something." "Therapy?" I scoffed. "What about me? I'm the one who got cheated on. Where's my help?" "I get it," he said, nodding. "But you got to decide what you want, Ryan. Do you want to try to fix this? Or are you done?" That was the million-dollar question, and I didn't have an answer. For the next few weeks, I threw myself into work, avoiding Emily and ignoring her texts. But the more I tried to push it all away, the more it consumed me. I started having nightmares, vivid dreams of Emily with other men, laughing at me, mocking me. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, my heart racing, feeling like I couldn't breathe. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my phone and texted her. "We need to talk. In person." She replied within seconds. "Name the time and place. I'll be there." We met at a diner on the edge of town, neutral ground, away from the house we used to share. She looked different than the last time I'd seen her. Tired, thinner, like the weight of everything was finally catching up to her. "Thanks for meeting me," she said quietly as I slid into the booth across from her. "Don't thank me," I said. "I'm not here for you. I'm here because I need answers." She nodded, her hands trembling as she sipped her coffee. "Ask me anything," she said. "I'll tell you the truth. I promise." For the next 2 hours, we talked. Really talked. She told me everything. How Vanessa had lured her in with promises of easy money. How the thrill of it all had blinded her to the consequences. How she'd started lying to herself long before she lied to me. "I was selfish," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I wanted to feel special, important. and I didn't think about what it would do to you, to us. I hate myself for it, Ryan. I really do. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that she was truly sorry, that she could change. But could I forgive her? As the night wore on, I realized something. Forgiveness wasn't about letting her off the hook. It was about letting go of the anger that was eating me alive. But letting go didn't mean staying. I can't do this, I said finally, my voice breaking. I can't go back to the way things were. Her face crumpled, and she reached across the table, grabbing my hand. Please, Ryan, she begged. I'll do whatever it takes. Therapy, counseling, anything. Just don't give up on us. I'm not giving up, I said, pulling my hand away. I'm letting go. For both of us. That night, I made the hardest decision of my life. I filed for divorce. It wasn't about punishment or revenge. It was about starting over, about finding a way to heal without the weight of her betrayal holding me down. Have you ever faced a moment where you had to choose between staying and letting go? How do you make that choice? Let me know in the comments. I thought filing for divorce would be the end of it. I thought I'd cut ties with Emily, start rebuilding my life, and move on. But I couldn't have been more wrong. If anything, filing was just the beginning of uncovering how deep her lies ran. At first, the process was straightforward. I filed the paperwork, moved into a small rental apartment, and blocked her number to give myself some space. I wasn't bitter. I was just done. At least, that's what I told myself. But deep down, part of me wasn't ready to let go entirely. And then the calls started coming. It wasn't Emily calling. I'd blocked her, and I wasn't planning on unblocking her anytime soon. No, these calls were from random numbers I didn't recognize. At first, I ignored them. But when the same number called 3 times in a row one afternoon, curiosity got the better of me. Hello, I said, bracing myself for a scammer or telemarketer. Is this Ryan? A woman's voice asked hesitantly. Yeah, who's this? This is Vanessa, she said, her voice tight with nervous energy. I froze. Vanessa, the woman Emily said had introduced her to the Orchid Room. The one who, whether directly or indirectly, had turned my entire life upside down. What do you want? I asked, my tone sharper than I intended. I need to talk to you, she said quickly. It's about Emily. I don't want to hear it, I snapped, ready to hang up. Wait, she said urgently. I'm serious. There are things you don't know, things she didn't tell you. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the screen. Every instinct told me to hang up, to walk away, and leave the past where it belonged. But something in her voice stopped me. 5 minutes, I said grudgingly. That's all you've got. She let out a relieved sigh. Thank you. Can we meet somewhere? I don't feel comfortable talking about this over the phone. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We set a time to meet at a coffee shop downtown, neutral ground just in case this was some kind of setup. When I walked into the cafe the next day, Vanessa was already there, sitting in a corner booth with a nervous look on her face. She was younger than I'd expected, early 30s, with perfectly styled hair and an outfit that screamed money. You're Ryan? She asked as I approached the table. I nodded and slid into the seat across from her. Start talking. She fiddled with her coffee cup, avoiding my gaze. Look, I don't know how much Emily told you about the Orchid Room, but it's worse than you think. Worse how? I asked, narrowing my eyes. She hesitated, then leaned in closer. The Orchid Room isn't just a private club. It's part of a network. The women who work there don't just serve drinks or keep clients company. Well, Yeah, I know, I said bitterly. Emily already told me she was a call girl. Vanessa shook her head. It's more than that. The Orchid Room is connected to some very powerful people. The clients aren't just businessmen. They're politicians, CEOs, people who can ruin your life with a single phone call. And Emily? She wasn't just any girl there. She was one of their top earners. Her words hit me like a freight train. Top earner? Emily had told me she'd only been doing this for a few months, that she'd hated every second of it. But now I was hearing a completely different story. You're lying, I said flatly. Emily would never. I'm not lying. Vanessa interrupted, her voice firm. Look, I don't know why she did it or what she told you, but I know what I saw. She was good at what she did, Ryan. Too good. My stomach churned. I didn't want to believe her. But deep down, I knew she was telling the truth. What do you want from me? I asked, my voice tight. I just thought you should know, Vanessa said, looking genuinely apologetic. And to warn you, the people she was working with don't like loose ends. If she's trying to leave that world behind, it could get messy. Messy. That word lingered in the air like a bad smell. What does that mean? I asked, my heart pounding. It means, Vanessa said carefully, that if she owes them money or if she pissed off the wrong client, they won't just let her walk away. These people don't play games. I left the cafe in a daze, my mind racing with questions. Was Emily in danger? Was I? And why the hell had she dragged me into this mess? For the next few days, I couldn't focus on anything else. I thought about calling her, demanding answers, but my pride wouldn't let me. Instead, I did the one thing I swore I wouldn't do. I went back to the house. When I arrived, Emily was sitting on the front porch, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Her eyes widened when she saw me, and for a second, I thought she might run to hug me. But I stayed rooted in place, my arms crossed over my chest. "We need to talk," I said bluntly. She nodded, her expression wary. "Come inside." The house smelled like her, lavender and vanilla, but it didn't feel like home anymore. I sat on the couch, keeping as much distance between us as possible. "Who do you owe money to?" I asked without preamble. Her face went pale. "What are you talking about?" "Don't play dumb, Emily," I said, my voice rising. "Vanessa told me everything. About the network, the clients, all of it. So tell me, who do you owe?" She buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. "It's not about money," she said finally, her voice muffled. "It's about a client. I broke one of their rules." "What rule?" I demanded. "I refused," she said, looking up at me with tear-streaked cheeks. "There was this man, a powerful man, and he wanted me to do something I couldn't. So I said no. And now, I think he's trying to make me pay for it." Her words sent a chill down my spine. This wasn't just about our marriage anymore. This was about survival. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I asked, my voice softening. "I didn't want to drag you into it," she said. "I thought I could handle it on my own." "Well, you can't," I said firmly. "So what's the plan, Emily? Because sitting here and crying isn't going to fix anything." Over the next few days, we tried to piece together a plan. Emily wanted to leave town, start fresh somewhere far away, but I wasn't convinced running was the answer. Then, one night, everything came to a head. I was leaving work when I noticed a black SUV parked across the street. At first, I didn't think much of it, but when I pulled out of the parking lot, the SUV followed. It tailed me all the way home, keeping a careful distance, but never disappearing from my rearview mirror. By the time I pulled into my driveway, my hands were shaking. When I got inside, Emily was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She looked up when she saw me, her face lighting up with surprise. "Ryan, what are you?" "Pack a bag," I interrupted. "Now." I never thought my life would turn into one of those stories you read about in trashy novels or see in late-night crime shows. Yet there I was, standing in the middle of my living room, telling my soon-to-be ex-wife to pack her bags because someone in a black SUV had just followed me home. Emily froze, her phone slipping out of her hand and landing on the couch. "What do you mean, pack a bag?" she asked, her voice shaky. "I mean we need to leave. Now," I said, grabbing her by the arm. "I saw someone following me on the way home. I'm not waiting around to find out what they want." She stared at me, her face pale but didn't argue. For once, she didn't try to spin some excuse or deny what was happening. Instead, she bolted upstairs and started throwing clothes into a duffel bag. By the time we left the house, my adrenaline was running on fumes. I drove aimlessly for hours, checking my mirrors every few seconds, half expecting that SUV to show up at any moment. Emily sat in the passenger seat, silent except for the occasional sniffle. "Where are we going?" she asked finally. "I don't know," I admitted. "But we can't go back there." We ended up at a cheap motel off the interstate. The kind of place where the neon sign flickers, and you have to double-check the sheets for bedbugs. Not exactly the escape plan of the year, but it was better than staying put and waiting for whatever or whoever was coming for us. Emily was unusually quiet as we settled into the room. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor like it held all the answers to her problems. "What's going on in your head?" I asked, pulling a chair around to face her. "I'm scared, Ryan," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've screwed up so badly, and now I don't know how to fix it." Her vulnerability caught me off guard. For months, I'd been seeing her as this manipulative, deceitful person who destroyed our marriage. But sitting there in that dingy motel room, she just looked broken. The thing about fear is that it has a way of stripping you down to your rawest self. No lies, no excuses, just the truth. And for the first time since this nightmare began, Emily started telling me hers. "I didn't tell you everything," she said, her voice trembling. "No kidding," I said, my tone sharper than I intended. "I mean about the client," she said quickly. "The one I refused?" I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. "Go on." "He wasn't just some guy," she said, avoiding my eyes. "He's connected. A politician, I think. Or maybe a CEO. I don't know exactly. But he's powerful." "So what happened?" I asked. He wanted me to do something illegal, she said, her voice barely audible. Something with drugs. I said no, and he didn't take it well. Illegal how? I pressed. I don't know, she cried, her voice breaking. He didn't give me details, just hinted at it. When I refused, he got angry, said I was going to regret it. Her confession left me reeling. As much as I wanted to be angry, I couldn't ignore the fear in her voice or the way her hands shook as she spoke. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I asked softly. Because I was ashamed, she admitted. I didn't want you to know how far I'd fallen, and I didn't want to drag you into this mess. Well, congratulations, I said bitterly. I'm in it now. That night, neither of us slept much. I kept a chair propped against the door, like that would somehow stop anyone determined enough to come after us. Emily stayed curled up on the bed, staring at the ceiling with wide, unblinking eyes. By morning, I'd made up my mind. We couldn't keep running. We needed help. I called Jason. Man, this is way above my pay grade, he said after I explained everything. You need to go to the cops and tell them what? I asked. That my wife was working at a high-end brothel run by criminals, and now we're being followed? They'll either laugh me out of the station or arrest her on the spot. Then talk to a lawyer, he suggested. You need someone who knows how to deal with this kind of stuff. It wasn't a bad idea. But as much as I hated to admit it, I didn't have the money for a high-priced attorney. Between the cost of moving out, filing for divorce, and now living out of motels, my savings were running on empty. As the days went on, the paranoia only got worse. Every time I saw a black car, my heart raced. Every time the motel phone rang, I jumped. Emily wasn't much better. She flinched at every sound, her nerves stretched thin like a frayed wire. And then it happened. We were driving back to the motel after grabbing some groceries when I noticed the SUV again. It was parked across the street, engine idling. The windows were tinted, so I couldn't see who was inside, but I didn't need to. I knew it was them. Emily, I said, my voice tight. Get out of the car. Now. What? Why? She asked, panic flashing in her eyes. Just do it. I snapped, yanking open my door. She hesitated for a moment before following my lead. We ran into the motel, my heart pounding like a drum. Inside, I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. This is Ryan Parker, I said quickly. I think I'm being followed. There's a black SUV parked across the street from the Sunny Rest Motel on 8th Avenue. You need to send someone now. The dispatcher assured me help was on the way, but those few minutes felt like an eternity. I peeked out the window, my hands trembling, and saw the SUV pull away. When the cops arrived, I explained everything, or at least as much as I could without incriminating Emily. They took a statement, promised to patrol the area, and left. But it wasn't enough. I could feel it in my gut. This wasn't over. The final blow came 2 days later. I was out getting gas when I got a call from Emily. Ryan, she said, her voice barely recognizable through her sobs. They came to the motel. My blood ran cold. What happened? I demanded. They left a note, she said, her voice trembling. It said, time's up. By the time I got back, she was gone. The room was empty, her bag missing. On the bed was the note she'd mentioned, scrawled in jagged handwriting that sent a chill down my spine. I didn't know where she went. Maybe she decided to run again, thinking she could outrun them. Or maybe they'd taken her. I never found out. Months later, I got a call from Vanessa. They found her, she said quietly. Out in the desert. I thought you want to know. I hung up without saying a word. Emily's choices had destroyed her, and almost destroyed me. But as much as I hated what she'd done, I couldn't hate her. She'd been lost, broken, desperate for something more, and it had cost her everything. I'll never forget her. But I'll also never let myself fall into someone else's lies like that again. What would you do if someone you love pulled you into a nightmare like this? Would you run, fight, or try to save them? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories of betrayal, redemption, and the lessons we learn from the ones we trust.